Good morning. It's good to see you here today, so many of you. I hope you're enjoying the snow, beautiful snow. My name is Jenny Rankin. I'm the interim minister here at First Parish in Lincoln, and you are joining worship with friends and members and visitors. We will have worship in person next week in our sanctuary. That's exciting news, with all the usual safety protocols, and you'll hear more about that at the end of the service. You need to sign up online and such, but it'll be good to be back in person. And of course, we'll still be on Zoom. I want to mention that today we are observing Holocaust Remembrance Day, which was Thursday, and that will be the theme of our service. I'd invite you to put your prayers in the chat. We'll read them out loud during our prayer time. We hope you're writing your Lenten booklet entry. If you haven't already, I'm still working on mine. I confess they are due tomorrow. And I think we can wave to each other. So, good morning, First Parish in Lincoln. Scroll around, take a look. Hello, good to see you. And let's deepen into worship with our opening words.
All you broken-hearted and bereaved,
you joyful and well-rested,
you overwhelmed and overworked, come.
All you disappointed and desperate,
you playful and delighted,
you angry and over it, come.
No matter the weather of our hearts, this day is sacred.
Let us worship, gathered in the love that never ceases.
And now, remaining muted, I invite you to join together in singing our opening hymn, Praise to the Living God. And now would you join me in a spirit of prayer? Holy One, giver of ordinary wonders, come and usher us this morning toward life. Keep us from losing touch with all the miracles around us, the way love persists, the way the earth holds us, the way it's never too late for new beginnings. In this, the heart of winter, make a way for us back to the simple truths that sustain. May we remember here in this space of chosen community that who we are is enough. For all that enables rest and freedom, and for the comfort of collective care, we bring our thanks and our worship. Amen.
Please join me, if you'd like, in our covenant, in the love of truth, and in the spirit of Jesus. We unite for the worship of God and the service of all.
Sorry, I thought I hit unmute. I started talking. Good morning, First Parish. Now I'm unmuted. In 1947, the world was stunned by the publication of a simple book, The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. Truly a work for all ages. Children and adults were then and continue to be moved by her words, her experiences, her life story. So real and so tragic. This morning, I share that story for all ages from another perspective. This is the book, The Tree in the Courtyard, Looking Through Anne Frank's Window, by Jeff Gottsfeld, illustrated by Peter Mccarty, and published by Alfred A. Knopf in New York. It begins with Anne's own words from her writing. Ooh. And I forgot a critical piece of equipment, my reading glasses. The two of us looked out at the blue sky, the bare chestnut tree glistening with dew, the seagulls and other birds glinting with silver as they swooped through the air, and we were so moved and entranced that we couldn't speak. Anne Frank, from her diary. The tree in the courtyard lived for 172 years. She was a horse chestnut. Her leaves were green stars, her flowers foaming cones of white and pink. Each fall, she let spiky seed pods clatter to earth. In winter, her bare boughs etched a lattice against the pale blue sky. She grew near a city canal. Seagulls flocked to her shade. For the first part of her life, her world was the courtyard. She was not yet tall enough to see beyond the homes, workshops, and factories. Then one spring, she stretched above the orange roofs and took in the beautiful city. She spread roots and reached skyward in peace until war came. Explosions shook the ground, rockets split the night, strangers invaded the city. The first winter of the war, a new owner came to one of the factories. He had a wife and two daughters. The older girl was quiet and proper. The younger was lively with dark hair. When they visited the factory, she would play by the canal or write in the kitchen window. She wrote for hours. Even when her father called her, she wrote. The tree loved the sight of her. In the heat of midsummer, the girl stopped coming. The tree dropped worried leaves until she spotted the girl in the factory annex. Her family was there too. A father, mother, and boy soon joined them. Later, another man and a black cat. The girl and her father stitched ragged curtains for the main windows. From time to time, a face might peer out between the cracks. The only clear view was into the attic. There, the girl would read, stroke the cat, and brush her unruly hair. Sometimes she stared at the sky. Mostly she wrote. She filled a red and white diary. When warplanes roared and bombs rocked the annex, the girl fled to her father's arms. She did not come outside. The tree did not understand. The war dragged on. Once through the curtain, the tree watched the people light candles and sing. The girl grew pale and thin. A young woman helper who worked in the factory brought her paper and pens. The girl wrote and wrote some more. She filled page after page. The fourth winter of the war, the tree saw the boy with the girl. They would talk and laugh or simply gaze out the attic window at her bare branches glistening with dew, so moved and entranced they couldn't speak. They kissed. The tree made her blossoms extra bright that spring. Late one summer morning, men in gray uniforms came to the factory. They ripped the curtains from the annex windows, dumped the girls' papers to the floor, and herded the people into waiting black cars. The cars sped off. The woman from the factory gathered up the girls' writing. The tree kept a vigil. Summer, autumn, winter, spring, the seasons changed. The war ended. Only the father returned. He was thin with sad eyes as he padded through the annex like a living ghost. The woman helper gave him the girl's writing. They cried. The tree lived on, but she was never the same. Time passed. To her surprise, other children began coming to the annex. They walked where the girl had walked and sat where she had sat. Some found a wind-blown seed pod on the pavement or gazed at the tree, so moved and entranced that they couldn't speak. Year after year they came. By the end of the century, the tree had lived a full life. She was ready to die. Many strangers came to try to save her. They injected her with medicine. They trimmed her crown and cut sprouts from her trunk. They built her a steel support and collected her seed pods like gold coins. The tree recalled how few had tried to save the girl. The summer the girl would have turned 81, a storm snapped the tree trunk in two. Just like the girl, the tree passed into history. Just like the girl, she lives on. Her seeds and saplings have been planted with love. One grows in New York City, where Twin Towers once stood. Another grows in an Arkansas high school. Still more grow in England, Argentina, France, all around the world. Though the new trees are still young, children come to visit. They read the girl's words about a chestnut in a courtyard glistening with dew and touch the thin trunks. They are so entranced that they cannot speak. From the past, we're called to consider who are the Anne Franks of today? How will we make sure they grow up How may we help them see a world, live in a world where all may be entranced and made speechless?
Our first reading this morning is from both Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 9, followed by a reading from Eddie Helson's diary. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 9. But take care and watch yourselves closely, so as neither to forget the things that your eyes have seen, nor let them slip from your mind all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and your children's children. And from the diary of Eddie Helson, upon learning that the Jews in Amsterdam were going to be deported to Poland. Dated July 10th, 1942. I keep fretting and brooding and trying to do the most urgent daily chores as quickly as possible. And there is a knot inside that makes it hard to breathe, and I rack my brains and have to give up my studies, pace up and down the room, have a stomachache and so on, and suddenly my confidence floods back. Your worries leap up on you like vermin. All right, so you have to do some scratching and your looks suffer as a result, but in the end, you manage to shake them off. A hard day, a very hard day. But I keep finding myself in prayer, and that is something I shall always be able to do, even in the smallest space. Pray. And I shall wield this slender fountain pen. I shall wield this slender fountain pen as if it were a hammer. And my words will have to be so many hammer strokes with which to beat out the story of our fate and of a piece of history as it is and never was before. Not in this totalitarian, massively organized form spanning the whole of Europe. Still, a few people must survive, if only to be the chroniclers of this age. Here ends the reading.
We come now to the time in our service that we set aside for prayer. After we listen to a prayer hymn, we'll have a moment of silence, and then we will read any of the prayers put in the chat. A prayer of thanksgiving from Rachel Mason for Margaret and Sarah. A prayer from Paula Waterman. Great Spirit, hold all who have gone before us together in a place of honor and love. May we never forget what they have given up. A prayer from Rosemary Lloyd. Prayers for the Uyghur people, Muslims in China, who are forced labor camps making our cheap t-shirts and jeans. May we awaken to the ways we are unaware of this suffering, even complicit when we purchase the clothes made inexpensive through the high cost of their lives. From Jenny Rankin, we hold Wendy Horowitz and her family in our hearts following the death of her mother, Patty, last week. And from Joan Kimball, a prayer of peace in the Ukraine, in the US, and in all of us. And we hold all of these spoken prayers as well as the unspoken prayers. We lift them up from our hearts to the heart of God.
Living Spirit and Spirit of life that inhabits all creatures. Like so many times before, we gather to express our gratitude for the blessings we enjoy and share together in our church, our community, and our nation. Aware that we do so on the shoulders of those who came before us, we ask your forgiveness for sometimes thinking we've earned or deserved your favor as we look around at the bounty and beauty in which we bathe. Yet there are some among us who are troubled with unanswered questions about ourselves and our faith. For millennia, people from all walks of life have beseeched you for help with life's challenges, whether personal, familial, communal, or cultural. For thousands of years, such prayers have been uttered by folks of all faiths, all races and ethnic groups, and by all major religions in the world, using words of every language spoken by hundreds of cultures. You've heard us ask for help on the shallowest of requests, like winning the lottery or a football game. You've heard us beg for forgiveness for our occasional bad behavior or wrongdoings, such as insults or hurtful words spoken in anger, frustration, or defense of our own egos. But perhaps the weightiest of these is when we ask for redemption for turning blind eyes and deaf ears to what we know from all moral teachings is cruelty and injustice. If the essence of Jesus' presence on earth was to help the oppressed, should we continue as we have done for so long to pray silently from behind clear windows? To pray for those less fortunate, to those left behind, those who are marginalized, and those who are exploited in society? Would you choose to answer those prayers now when they have gone unanswered for so many times for so many people before in this nation and around the world? Could it be that your real gift to humanity was our conscience and our own ability to overcome injustice if only we were aware of our role in creating, sustaining, benefiting, or tolerating it? As we continue on our spiritual journeys, we pray for equity and equality among all peoples, and we ask your help in facing ourselves honestly so that we might live up to Jesus' example and translate our moral intent into moral action. Help us to see the artificial divisions of race, ethnicity, and class, as well as the demonization of others as the distractions they really are, namely the tools of those who seek power, privilege, and dominion over all others. Grant us the willingness to endure the discomfort of honest conversations as we learn to see through others' eyes, to hear through others' ears, and to feel what it's like to experience life in their shoes. Help us to recognize that the common interests of humankind far outweigh our limited personal interest in our own economic or social well-being. Grant us the energy, determination, and perseverance needed to intentionally act on what we can do individually and as a community to remove the systemic obstacles that prevent the full flowering of all folks, regardless of race, caste, ethnicity, or spiritual belief. Free us from the blind spots, numbness, and inaction of our privilege, so we can work with purpose to dismember, reconcile, and repair the unfair means by which it was achieved. In praying for all these things, we ask for the courage to live up to the words of our covenant and call to worship that we recite each week from behind our clear windows. Maybe then there will be light, as captured in the borrowed words of Amanda Gorman. If only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it. Amen. And now, join me in the Unison Prayer if you wish. You who are over us, you who are one of us, you who are also within us, may all see you in me also. May I prepare the way for you. May I thank you for all that shall fall to my lot. May I also not forget the needs of others. Give me a pure heart that I may see you, a humble heart that I may hear you, a heart of love that I may serve you, a heart of faith that I may abide in you. Amen.
And our reading is also by Eddie Helson, two excerpts from her diary, one from July 1st, 1942, just after she learned about the deportations to Poland. I am in Poland every day, she writes, on the battlefields, if that's what one can call them. I often see visions of poisonous green smoke. I am with the hungry, the ill-treated, and the dying every day. but I'm also with the jasmine and with that piece of sky beyond my window. There is room for everything in a single life, for belief in God and for a miserable end. And the last entry of her diary before she goes to the transit camp, Westerbrook, and we can read her letters from there. 28 July 1942. I shall become the chronicler of our adventures. I shall forge them into a new language and store them inside me, so I should have no chance to write things down. I shall grow dull and come to life again, fall down and rise up again. And one day I may perhaps discover a peaceful space around me that is mine alone. And I shall sit there for as long as it takes, even if it should be a year, until life begins to bubble up in me again. And I find the words that bear witness where witness needs to be born. Good morning, church, as Sarah says. It's good to see you. Maybe some of you saw the headline in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. 80 years ago, the Germans planned the final solution. It took 90 minutes. The story was about 15 men who gathered 80 years ago on January 20th, 1942, in a mansion outside of Berlin for what has become known as the Wannsee Conference, and in the space of an hour and a half, drew up plans for the extermination of Jews across Europe. Holocaust Remembrance Day was this past Thursday, and we know that anti-Semitism, neo-Nazism are on the rise, not only in America, but in Europe as well. How many Americans today deny that the Holocaust ever happened? Different studies tell us different things, 18%, 25%. Who really knows? It's safe to say that many Americans assert that the Holocaust, the government-planned, systematic, successful murder of 6 million Jews and 11 million others, that it simply never happened. Deborah Lipstadt is a professor at Emory University who has spent her career, studying the Holocaust, anti-Semitism, and most recently, Holocaust denial. She distinguishes between hardcore denial, the assertion that it simply never happened, and softcore denial. It wasn't really 6 million. They didn't use gas chambers. Her 1993 book, Denying the Holocaust, The Growing Assault on Truth and Memory, remains a primer on Holocaust denial. And the lawsuit that happened when one of the men named in her book, David Irving, sued her in London, became the Daily Telegraph said, the Eichmann trial for a new generation. She had to prove in British court that the Holocaust was real, and she did. So today I wanted to bring you the story, the voice of a young Dutch woman named Eddy Hilson. Unlike Anne Frank, she's not well known. Her diaries were lost, only published in the 1980s. She was never the international best-selling sensation that Elie Wiesel or Anne Frank became. But I find in these pages an unflinchingly honest, emotionally mature, and spiritually riveting account. She has a place in the small part of my bookshelf where I keep my favorite books. To me, hers is a spiritual autobiography. That is, it's a story about the growth of a soul that speaks out of the fire that was Hitler's Third Reich. But before I begin, I want to acknowledge the danger of what Holocaust scholar Lawrence Langer calls a sentimental response to the Holocaust. He sees a book like Elie Wiesel's Night, with its assertion by Wiesel that God was murdered in Auschwitz. Langer sees that book as the essential antidote to the diary of Anne Frank, with its ringing declaration, I still believe people are really good at heart. It's not that one is better or worse than another. but just that it's important to read them both. And I think The Interrupted Life of Eddie Hilson may come somewhere between the two, between Night and Anne Frank's diary. She was born Esther Hilson, but became known as Eddie. She was born in Holland on January 14th, 1914, to a middle-class family. Her father, a professor of classical languages. One brother, Misha, was considered one of the best pianists in all of Europe, and another became a doctor. Eddie studied at the University of Amsterdam, earning a law degree in 1932, and then a degree in Slavonic languages. Her specialty was Russian. In May of 1940, the Germans invaded Holland, and 7 months later, Eddie begins her diary. March 9th, 1941. Here goes then, she writes. It's a painful step for me, yielding up so much that has been suppressed to a blank sheet of lined paper. So many inhibitions, so much fear of letting go, allowing things to pour out of me. Yet it is what I must do. At first, it's the writing of a young woman with a big circle of friends and a variety of lovers, urbane, emancipated, intellectual, ambitious. She loves to talk literature and history with her friends. She loves nothing better than to be at her desk with Tolstoy or Dostoevsky to translate and her little Russian dictionary. She loves Rilke especially, but also Carl Jung, St. Augustine, and later the Bible. But we also see a young woman who's in a kind of uproar, flailing about, full of zest and passion one minute and deeply doubting and self-critical the next. She is moody, and her diary begins as a continuous animated dialogue, herself with herself. She's trying to get a handle on her shifting moods, put some order, as she says, to the chaos within me. Her entries are raw, honest, and even sometimes almost shocking. But we get to see what's exactly is inside her heart and her mind as she pours it all out on the page. We watch a young woman becoming a beautifully fluent writer with that precision of detail. We watch her overcome her embarrassment about prayer. She calls herself the girl who is afraid to kneel, going on to develop an inner life that is rich and sustaining. And we watch a Jewish woman trying to reckon in the early 1940s with the approach of the Holocaust, getting a new and profound sense of her own inner strength. Shortly after Eddie began her diary in the spring of 1941, the Nazis made their first roundup of Dutch Jews in Amsterdam, and a second one on June 11th, 1941. On June 14th, Eddie wrote, "More arrests, more terror, concentration camps, the arbitrary dragging off of fathers, sisters, brothers. We seek the meaning of life, wondering whether any meaning can be left. But that is something each one of us must settle with himself and with God." She's confronted with people who don't want to see, think, or feel, she says, because it hurts too much. But she continues to be unflinching, looking at the events around her straight on as she did her own psyche. "I've tried to look the suffering straight in the face," she writes. And this is a theme we'll see throughout, her desire to be a witness to her own age, her own little piece of history, a poet and a moral witness, just like James Baldwin was in America in the 1960s. Sometimes she says, "I feel ashamed to take myself so seriously, but you must," she writes, "remain your own witness, marking well everything that happens in this world, never shutting your eyes to reality. You must come to grips with these terrible times. I sometimes feel like a post standing in a raging sea, lashed on all sides by waves. I want to become the chronicler of things that are happening now." The process of how a person changes, of course, is so mysterious. But as the spring of 1941 wears on into the summer, and Jews are forced to wear yellow stars in Amsterdam, April 27th, no longer allowed on trams, her feet get blisters walking around the city, not allowed in parks. She cycles on her bicycle next to the canals and looks up at the sky, treasuring that little piece of sky and saying that inside her soul, she feels the spaciousness of the sky too. Having to give up their bicycles and being held to a curfew of 8 p.m. In other words, as the news tightens, we watch the tone of Eddie's diary shift radically right in front of our eyes. On June 29th, she writes in her diary that all Jews will be transported out of Holland through the Drenthe province and into Poland. She says that she has heard on English radio that 700,000 Jews were gassed last year. And on 3 July 1942, at 8:30 p.m. on Friday evening, she writes, "Yes, I am still at the same desk, but it seems to me that I am going to have to draw a line under everything and continue in a different tone. I must admit a new insight into my life and find a place for it. They are out to destroy us completely. We must accept that and go on from there. Today, I was filled with terrible despair, and I shall have to come to terms with that as well. Very well, then, this new certainty, I accept it. I know it now, and I shall not burden others with my fears. I shall not be bitter if others fail to grasp what is happening to us Jews. I work and continue to live with the same conviction, and I find life meaningful, yes, meaningful, though I hardly dare to say it in these days." And then she says, "Somewhere there is something inside me that will never desert me again." We don't know, of course, exactly what Eddie knew or didn't know. Poland is always used as a word that is surrounded with immense dread. Whether she knew that Jews were being gassed to death in concentration camps, we just can't know. But we see this radical shift in her diary in July. Day after day, hour by hour, we watch her wrestling her fear and her terror to the ground, getting up again, going down again. She's always spoken of God in these pages, but now she starts to write to God directly. "Dear God," June 12th, a Sunday morning prayer. "Dear God, these are anxious times." By looking death straight in the face, she says, "It has enlarged my sense of life." What a paradox. On 15 July 1942, a friend wangles Eddie a job at the Jewish Council. That's the group that was kind of a go-between between the Nazis and the Jews. And people who worked there got a bit of a stay on their call-up notices to Poland. From then on, for the next year and a half or so, Eddie would accompany Jews from Amsterdam on the train to the transit camp at Westerbork. And after July of 1943, she stayed there. Her parents joined her. She boards the train for Westerbork for the last time and will not be coming back to Amsterdam. They are so incredibly efficient in this utter hell, Eddie writes on June 21, 1943, after this year of shuttling back and forth, volunteering at the transit camp for months, and then returning to Amsterdam when her health fell apart. So indescribably efficient in this utter hell. It was the day after the Nazis had done another major raid in Amsterdam, and Westerbork, which had been built for 1,000 people, was flooded with 12,000, then 30,000, then 40,000, as Jews from all over Holland were sent there. It was the last stop before the train to Auschwitz. What we have now, she writes, is a complete catastrophe. During the last 24 hours, the camp has been engulfed by successive tidal waves of Jews, including her parents. She is glad to see them. They are in the big barracks now, a jam-packed human warehouse. People sleeping 3 to a bed in narrow iron bunks, no mattresses for the men, children terrified and screaming, the greatest possible wretchedness. I shall try to get through it as best I can. I often feel quite strong and brave, although sometimes I see nothing but blackness and nothing makes any sense at all. In September of 1943, Eddie and her brother Misha and her parents got the call-up notice and were put on the train to Auschwitz. In the end, Eddie wrote, the departure came without warning. The call-up orders came from The Hague on September 7th, 1943, and a friend describes that final scene. We felt that something might still be done, even on the train, but only if everything was ready. So her parents and Misha went to the train first, and I trundled Eddie's well-packed rucksack and a small hamper with a bowl and mug dangling from it to the train. And there she stepped out onto the platform that she herself had described only a fortnight before in her own unforgettable way. The train jammed with passengers, talking, smiling, a kind word for everyone she met on the way, full of sparkling humor and perhaps a touch of sadness, but still every inch the Eddie we knew so well. I have my diaries, she told me, my little Bible, my Russian grammar and Tolstoy with me, and God knows what else. The train whistle blew and the train pulled out of the station, headed for Auschwitz. For 2 years, that train arrived on a Monday night and left on a Tuesday morning, 93 times, carrying 1,000 or more prisoners each time, 100,000 Dutch Jews transported to Auschwitz. Eddie's parents were killed the day they arrived, and Eddie died, we are told, by the Red Cross on 30 November, 1943. Her brothers did not survive the camps. But we have one last word from Eddie. She wrote a postcard on the train to Auschwitz and threw it out the window, and it was found by farmers outside of Westerbork, who mailed it back to her friends in Amsterdam. Dear Christine, she writes, opening the Bible at random, I find this: God is my high tower. In the end, the departure came without warning. We left the camp singing, Father and Mother, firmly and calmly, we shall be traveling for 3 days. Thank you all for your kindness and care. Goodbye for now from the 4 of us. Eddie. Today we remember the Holocaust, the deniers, and the voices that speak out to us from the fire. We give thanks that the spirit of Eddie Helson and Anne Frank and Elie Wiesel and so many others, that their words and their spirit live on. So may it be. Amen.
Please join me now in our call to ministry. We go forth from the worship of God to be faithful to the vision of Jesus, to affirm each person's dignity, and to cherish the living earth.
And may we, like Eddie, try to look the events of our age straight in the face. May we bear witness. May we find courage. And may God bless you and keep you. Amen.
Now we come to the time for any announcements in our community. And I know that there's a few already. So I will ask if Barbara Slater would start us out.
Thank you, Deanna. Good morning. I'm Barbara Slater. And first I want to thank Jenny and Sarah and Deanna and Ken for this very powerful service. It was extraordinarily moving. I'd like to follow with an invitation to join FPL on our continuing racial justice journey this February 3rd at 7 o'clock on Zoom as we explore issues related to residential patterns and the creation of wealth. We shall be learning about redlining in maps first introduced in the 1930s that created racial boundaries defining neighborhoods, home ownership, and access to resources and services. How has redlining shaped residential patterns in Greater Boston? In what ways does Boston's history of redlining continue to impact our lives? Come learn about redlining and see the exhibit Undesigning the Red Line on Zoom. Pam Hurd will be moderating the evening's presentation and discussion. Braden Crooks from Designing the We will introduce us to redlining, assisted by Nella Young, who was instrumental in the first presentation at the Boston Architectural College in 2019. The evening is hosted by the First Parish and co-sponsored with the Lincoln Public Library and Lincoln Wide. All of us racial justice advocates, those on the racial justice journey, hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. And now for Janet Boynton for search.
The search committee has been very busy. We've been reading about our candidates. We've been interviewing, checking references, watching sermons on the internet. We've been talking and we've been praying. In other words, we're in the midst of the difficult and important work of discerning our new settled minister. It is a lot, but we hope and pray that in April, we'll have a wonderful candidate to introduce to you all.
Thank you, Janet. And Katie for the deacons. I believe you're here.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Katie.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just here to make a second plug for the Lenten booklet. I know that Jenny mentioned it at the beginning of the service, but we hope that you will contribute something by tomorrow for the Lenten booklet. There are a list of prompts in, I think, in this past week's announcements, but I will just reiterate a couple of them. The theme is a long time coming. Some of the possible thought starters are: what is something that you've waited a long time for? What made it important to you? What were things like if it eventually happened, and how did your life change if it did? What did you learn about yourself while you were waiting? And what did you learn about yourself after it happened? So we hope that you will send something in to Sylvia by tomorrow. Thanks.
Thanks, Katie. Looks like RL has his hand up, or Tucker, can't tell.
Actually, it's RL. As we move into the bleak midwinter, Jenny thought it might be fun to have a little fun during February and thought of these ideas of pop-up courses that might happen in February, just off the cuff things. and I have the honor of going first. So on Wednesday, February 2nd, we're going to be making cookies at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. You just send in your email address to Sarah K, sarah@fplincoln.org, and she will send you the recipe. And then we'll convene via Zoom at 4 o'clock on Wednesday and make a batch of rocks, spice cookies that are one of my very favorite. So I hope you join us for that. And there will be other pop-up happenings coming along as they get scheduled, but hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thanks, RL. Looks like Paula has her hand up.
Thank you, Deanna. Good morning, all you good folks. It's so lovely to see you here. Paula Waterman for the Deacons. As most of you know, we are reopening in-person services next Sunday, February 6th. We would like to return to our tradition of having 2 ushers from the congregation volunteering each Sunday to greet people and help them find their seats, pass out the orders of worship. It's not a difficult job. And since you're coming to church anyway, if you could give us an extra 30 minutes of your time to help set up and straighten up after the service, it would be much appreciated. What I'm going to do for the next few weeks is to walk around the church after the service with a clipboard, with a schedule on it of all the Sundays between now and June. And so you can sign up for whatever date you would like this coming throughout the spring. The deacons will be very grateful for your help, and I thank you all.
Thank you, Paula. And Mary Steck, I see your hand is up. I think you're muted, though.
Good morning. On behalf of Welcoming, I wanted to invite everyone to our offering next Sunday, Winter Carnival. We are having singing around a campfire. Steve Johnson and Sarah Bishop will be leading us in song. So come for some s'mores next Sunday, 3:30 to 4:30 beside the sanctuary, outside with a fire pit. And then one additional welcoming invitation, Sip, Talk, Learn. We hope to hold on February 13th. In order to do that, we need more storytellers. So please consider sharing a story, a passion, an experience, anything. It's 3 minutes, and let Tucker or myself know if you're interested in sharing something. So we hope to see you next Sunday afternoon, and we hope people will also help us with Sip, Talk, Learn on February 13th. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. Let's see, Sarah Kay, I believe you had an announcement.
Yes, thank you. So on behalf of the live streaming task force, I am delighted to report that the new wiring has been installed for our new live stream project, our new system that is it's underway. We're getting very close to the end here. We've got a number of pieces of equipment that have arrived, and we are waiting on shipping delays for the rest of it, but we are looking at very shortly having our new live streaming system up and running, which we are delighted about. We're working on finding a part-time paid person to run the live streaming system on a regular basis for Sunday morning. However, we do need to supplement that paid position with a bench of trained lay people. So this is a pressing need. We are looking for 3 or 4 people who are willing to be trained on the new system once it is installed, so that we can offer some flexibility when that particular person may not be available for a particular program or event that we're trying to hold. So let me know if you are interested in being trained on this new system. It is going to be a 1-person job where you sit at the booth and you basically have a series of buttons to press that will be housed in the robing room. So let me know if you have any questions, if you're interested in finding out more. You can email me at sarah@fplincoln.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that next week's Quiet Walk on February 4th will not be happening. There was a note in the chat. Jackie and Andy will be away, just so folks know. And also, just to go over some of the details around coming back in person, we will still be at a max of 50. So it will be very important that you register. The link is found on the worship page on our website. And you will be required to be masked at all times. And we will continue on Zoom as well for folks who aren't able to come be with us in person. And small groups are also allowed to have church meetings, but again, will need to be masked as well as socially distant. So hope that answers questions for people. And if I missed any other announcements, just speak up and we'll all hear from you. We are a busy community. Thank you. And now I think we'll go into our postlude.